3, 2, 1.
Good evening. This is the Nevada Unified School District. Today
Recording
is
in progress.
June 15th, 2021. It's 7 o'clock. We're starting open session. The first item is item 5, Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Announcements, reportable action from closed session. The clerk, board vice president, trustee Gasson.
Okay, I know it's been a long afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, so with respect to every item of, oh, this is where I need to read this. Do I read this first or do I read this entire document?
Debbie, could you look over your shoulder?
So that's what I'm reading with this whole thing. No, not this one. She said, read. Ellen? I do read this whole entire page? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'll start with this. Okay. So apologies. With respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 48918C, consider stipulated agreements for expulsion, student number 10000584494. This is the announcement of our board meeting for open session. On Tuesday, June 15th, 2021, the Nevada Unified School District Board of Trustees met in closed session to review the administrative hearing panel's recommendation on an expulsion of student number 10000584494 stipulated agreement. Based on the review of the panel's recommendation, Trustee Aguirre made the motion to expel. The student will be expelled to Marin County Office of Education's Marin Community School for the remainder of the semester. The student can return spring 2022 for the following Ed Code violations: 48915A2, 48900C. Trustee Butler seconded the motion. And I guess we do a roll call?
Yes.
Okay. Maria, do you want to start? Just your vote?
We're doing a roll call vote. You have to answer.
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson?
Yay.
Trustee Nell?
Aye.
Trustee Mack?
Aye.
Trustee Butler?
Aye.
Aye. And Trustee Miller?
Aye.
So that item. Moving on to the second item, with respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, conference with legal counsel pending litigation, Coalition to Save San Marin versus Nevada Unified School District, Marin County Superior Court case, number CIV 1702295. The board gave direction. With respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Superintendent, the board gave direction.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item 7, approval of the order of business, the agenda for this evening's meeting. Do I have an approval for the order of business?
Staff would like to make to remove an item from the agenda tonight, if possible, make a recommendation to do so at least.
No.
So staff requests that we pull item 14E. As we do our budget review, we want to make sure that that is our highest priority for expenditure of those dollars. So we want to just pull that for now, and we'll consider. You may see it again later, you may not.
Okay. So approval of the agenda, omitting item 14E. Do I have a motion from a member?
I'll move tonight's agenda as amended.
I'll second.
So first by Trustee Butler, pardon me, Nell, my eyes are going. Seconded by Trustee Aguilera. All in favor? 7 members in favor.
Yay.
Thank you very much. Public comment on the consent agenda. Do we? Not yet. Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. And the consent agenda is item 14. We're moving to item 9, which is approval of the consent agenda. And as already noted, item 14E has been removed from our business this evening. So I need a motion to approve is there anybody other items that trustees want to pull? So with that, I need a motion for the consent agenda omitting item 14E.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda omitting 14E.
Thank you. Trustee Aguilar, second. Trustee Nell, all in favor? 7 trustees in favor. Thank you very much. Are there any other consent comments that we want to bring forward? No. Okay. Announcements of boards and superintendents. We'll go around Maria, do we have any student board members joining us this evening? I don't see any.
No.
Okay, good. Trustee Aguilar?
None today.
Nothing today. Trustee Jacobson?
It was such a pleasure to get to partake in the graduation ceremonies. I attended Marin Oaks, which was lovely and very personal, Sinaloa, which was very big and festive, and then San Marin, which was just beautiful and inspiring. So really a treat. Thank you.
No comments
No
tonight.
comments. Trustee Mann?
I just let everyone know I attended the Marin Oaks graduation as well. Really appreciate the way it was organized. As always, did a great job. Novato, it was great to see the kids out there graduating again. They're so happy. I wish I could have gone to San Marin, but I had a family event, but I'm just glad we're getting some normalcy back.
Trustee Butler?
Yeah, I was able to attend Hamilton's 8th grade promotion, our adult education as well, and Novato High graduation. So it's fun to do it with Trustee Mack. And it was just nice to have some normalcy to our high school graduations, to see the flyover from our Coast Guard, to see the caps flying in the air and diplomas handed out. It was really nice. Good way to end our school year.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Trustee Gaffney?
I think it's my favorite is attending the graduations and ceremonies and stuff. So I did the adult ed as well. Also attended San Marin High, which was perfect weather. And also just want to, I did not attend as a trustee, but as a mom for Sinaloas. And I much appreciated, and my daughter and her friends really appreciated the effort and work that went into making that happen. They did the same thing over and over for groups of 30 kids or 30 families. So it was great and very much appreciated.
I had the opportunity to support San Jose Middle School. And during the middle of the presentation, the incoming principal, Mike Casper, came by the campus and talked to the faculty and talked to the outgoing principal. And it was really good to see him stepping up to as we transition leadership on that campus. Graduation is like the best thing we get to do here. Okay, thank you, Superintendent Costco.
Yeah, like many of the trustees, I was able to attend graduations and promotions. I was able to make it to 5, all of the middle school and the 2 comprehensive high school graduations. And I was just so impressed by how each of them was different, but how each of them was respectful of traditions and did everything they could within their power and the rules to meet the needs of their graduating or promoting classes. And I love that each of the school's cultures came out in those different events. Just made me very proud of our staff who worked so hard all year to get to this point where we could have these events. And just made me reflect on all the sacrifices that everybody has made in our community, in our society, to get us to a point where we were able to get the COVID rates down, get the vaccination rates up so that we were able to come together and have these events. That would not have happened without our community really rallying around making some significant sacrifices. You know, if we can all look back on our personal sacrifices that we've made over the last year and a half, those culminated on those days for those promotions. And so I'm just so thankful to everyone in our community, our staff, our families, who made those sacrifices so we could walk our kids across their stages.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations to the graduates, and my nephew graduated from Novato High. So I still have my niece at Loma Verde, so that I look forward to. But congratulations, this is what this is all about. So thank you.
Okay. We're moving on with the student trustees are not with us. We're moving on to non-agenda public comment. Are there any speakers? There's one public speaker. Ellen, you want to help us with this person?
Vicki, when you're ready.
Vicki.
Vicki, if you can hear us.
Yes, thank you. I'm not going to show my picture because I fell apart last time and got nervous. So I'm just going to read my letter. As a teacher that taught through a worldwide pandemic and taught remotely and hybrid and in person, I'm very proud of all the work we accomplished in such a difficult year. Even with all we did, there are major gaps for all of our students, especially our most vulnerable elementary students. We need to give our students as many opportunities to bridge these gaps with small class sizes and few combination classes. Some elementary schools in Novato are suffering such bad staffing issues that they have ended up with tons of combo classes. One school may have all of their 4th and 5th grade students in combo classes. Pretend that your child is going to 4th grade after a year-long pandemic and you are told that your child will be placed in a combo class where the teacher will have to deal with 30 kids, no aides, 2 grade levels. What message does that send to our wonderful Novato community? Do elementary students come first? And where is this extra funding money going? So I sent for the Lorax. You know, that one that speaks for the trees? Well, he is now speaking for our youngest and most vulnerable students. I'm the Lorax and I speak for the NUSD elementary students. For our youngest learners deserve to be in small straight grade classrooms. We want families to return to NUSD and be happy with what NUSD has to offer our youngest learners that suffered so greatly during the pandemic. Who would return to a school that is completely full of combo classes? I'm the Lorax and I speak for all students. We are told to wait and see if families return to NUSD and hope that the numbers will magically pan out to show some schools need to hire teachers in August. We can't wait till August. Things need to be done now. We have federal funds that could be used to hire teachers for a year to help keep our classes small and eliminate combo classes. We need to use this money aggressively this first year after the pandemic to start bridging the gap. Having combo classes divides the attention a teacher can focus on students because he or she has 2 different curriculums, which equals less time with each student. All students need time with their teacher, so the academic and emotional interventions can take hold. I'm the Lorax and I speak for our students. I beg you to look closely at these young learners and provide them with what they need to heal, be successful, and overcome the learning loss. This is best done with small classes and very few combo classes. When you do this, it will attract those wonderful families back to NUSD. This will cure the academic injury that these young learners would take with them throughout their school career. Put the money where the kids are, and don't forget about the youngest and most vulnerable students of Novato, because someday they will be high school.
Thank you very much. We're done with public comment. Okay, we're going to move on to the public hearings, item number 12A. The first public hearing is Local Control and Accountability, LCAP. And this is a public hearing which the board chair will open and take public comment. So I'm going to open the public hearing. We have no public comment for this item. Hearing no public comment, I'm going to close the item for public comment. The item is now closed. There's a second public hearing, 12B, preliminary general fund budget and budget reserves. We're going to open a public hearing for this item. Hearing no public comment, nobody online. We're going to close the public hearing. So this closes the public comment period for the next 2 items as well. So the next item that we have is 13A, which is a staff report, local control accountability plan. Superintendent Koska, would you lead us in this item, please?
Yeah, happy to. I am so proud of our team. I gotta say, the 2 teams that work closest together on these 2 items are our LCAP and our preliminary budget have been inundated with challenges associated with the mid-year departures of our assistant superintendents during a terribly challenging year to begin with. And I just got to say how proud I am of our team. And I want to acknowledge the sacrifices, the late nights, the early mornings to get this done. We're appreciative that Lois Standring has joined us. She's been a partner very late to the game in this process, but it's nice that her eyes have been on the process so that we can figure out what changes we want to make for next year. So this is better for staff come the second half of May and June. But before I turn it over to Jen, I'd be remiss if I just didn't thank everybody who put their fingers on this, who worked long days and late nights to get this done. So with that, I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent of Education Services, Jen Larson, and she's going to walk us through the presentation.
Good evening, trustees and Superintendent Koska. Thank you so much for having me tonight. It is my honor to have the privilege to present to you the first draft or reading of our 2021-22 LCAP, but also the final report on our 2019-2020 LCAP and our 2020-2021 LCP. That's a lot of acronyms in one sentence. Similar to Superintendent Koska, I really can't begin this presentation until thanking the incredibly devoted, hardworking team, both in Education Services and the Business Department, for the hours that were spent, not just in the planning and analysis, but also in the actual physical writing and putting this document together. So thank you to that team, and I'll have an opportunity to share all of their hard work. With that, I'm going to share my screen. Oops, and I have a host disabled screen sharing.
Go ahead, try it again, Jen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. If I could just get a thumbs up if you guys can see that.
Got it.
Perfect. All right. So this is a unique year for LCAP. Just to begin, I just want to remind the audience and everybody listening that our LCAP stands for our Local Control Accountability Plan. An LCAP is typically a 3-year plan. We finished up the 2019-20 school year was the last of a 3-year LCAP. However, because of COVID and the pandemic, we took a year in between and had a unique document called the LCP, or the Learning Continuity Plan. And I'll talk a little bit about the difference between those two. But because of that, we are now beginning a brand new 3-year cycle. And that district-wide LCAP is going to be from 2021 to 2024. Really, the purpose of the LCAP is twofold. One is it allows us to provide a document that shows the community, but also our organization, how our funds are going to be spent. The other is to ensure that we have a system in place where we are not just allocating dollars, but that we have a way that we are processing whether or not the actions and the funds that we are using are actually serving students, to ensure that their achievement and opportunities are increasing over time. All of the goals, actions, and services, and then aligned expenditures go through a cycle each year to determine whether or not their effectiveness is what we had hoped for. If we are in fact meeting our goals and students are seeing the impacts of the action items that have been articulated. And from there, we move forward and have the opportunity each year to update and report on the previous actions and make changes as needed to ensure that students are going to be having their needs met. Finally, it allows us to tell our story. We can talk about what it is great about Novato and where are the areas where we have needs, and use this tool to share with the community what it is we plan to do next. And let's see here. There we go. All right. One of the misconceptions is how the funding in the LCAP is broken up. So this is just a really simple graph to show that the LCAP is representative of two larger chunks of money, LCFF and LCFF supplemental. LCFF is the large pie piece that you see on the screen, representing the bulk of what our district has in their budget. This is what we will be focusing on tonight in our new LCAP as the maintenance of services. This includes all staffing, class size ratios. It includes all of the day-to-day maintenance and services that need to be in place in order for our schools to remain open and to have teachers and students arriving and being served every day. That small little pie piece is the LCF supplemental. That is a portion of the funds that comes specifically to increase and expand all of our services to ensure that the needs of our foster youth, our low income, and our EL students are served. The majority of the bulk of the document that you have in front of you, our LCAP, is going to outline our goals and our action items specific to the LCFF supplemental funds. All of the remaining part, our operating costs, are going to be in the last goal, goal 6, which is our maintenance of services. So with that, we spend most of the time in building our LCAP in the analysis and stakeholder engagement process. And the first thing we need to know when we're deciding how are we going to increase and expand our services to ensure better outcomes and closing the achievement and opportunity gaps for the 3 groups of students that have been identified, it's important for us to know who it is that we're serving. So what you have in front of you is simply a screenshot from Data Matters. This is today. And this is how we really start every single meeting. Who are we talking about? We need to make sure that we're able to put faces and numbers to the dollars that we are trying to allocate in the most responsible way. Our current English language learner population includes 1,210 students. Our free and reduced students is 2,732 students, and we currently have 20 foster youth students in Novato. As you can see, this is a percentage of our larger population, which is 7,409 students. So as we're walking through determining whether or not our actions have been effective and whether or not our money is being spent in the most effective way possible, this is the groups of students that we really want to keep our focus on. So as I said earlier, this is a very unique year. Typically at this time of the year, we would be coming and sharing with you a simple review of the year before and any changes or updates to the following year, but all a part of the process of one single 3-year document. Because of the timeline of the previous LCAP and the pandemic, this year was vastly different. So instead of having one document to look at, you actually have 3 this year. Technically, we have 4. Luckily, our ELO, or Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, was due in June, a little bit early prior to this, so we've already been able to move through that process and have that approved. So tonight, the 3 that remain are the review and final analysis of our 2019-2020 LCAP. And then we have our 2020-2021 LCP, or Learning Continuity Plan. That was a 1-year plan that served as a LCAP just for the time in which remote learning was a priority. Because of the unique needs during the pandemic and the unique funds that were allotted or allocated to school districts, it required its own individual document. And so the final analysis for those 2 are in front of you tonight. And then finally, our moving forward goals. And this is our 2021-2022 year 1 of a 3-year LCAP cycle. So while tonight we'll be talking mainly about the goals for the next year, please know that this is the document that you will see returned to you until 2024. So as I mentioned, our process really involves a great deal of analysis and stakeholder engagement. From the very beginning, our team worked closely with the business department, and we really wanted to ensure that the very priority, our number 1 North Star, was equity. So rather than our typical 3 groups that we work with, we actually included from the beginning our equity blueprint team. As you may remember, we did an equity blueprint audit several years ago in partnership with Education Trust West. We invited them back to be our partners and brought an entire equity blueprint team back to work through the stakeholder engagement process to ensure that as we went through each one of the steps of analysis, data collection, and budget allocation, that we really had equity and the ideas and data that came out of that audit at the forefront. So with that, we actually included several other groups. One of the things that came out of that process was we need far more student voice. We also need to ensure that we have some of our community-based organizations giving feedback, because they're the ones who are actually serving our students that are most at promise. So with that, we had the following LCAP Advisory Committee: the Equity Blueprint Team, our typical Parent Advisory Committee. We added a Student Advisory Committee, which was made up of a student representative from each of our 13 schools. They ranged in grade from 5th through 12th. We had our DLAC Committee, our District School Site Council, our DLT, or our District Leadership Team, and then, of course, as I mentioned, our community-based organization partners. Each of these groups went through a process with the Education Services team to evaluate all of our previous action items, to evaluate how the actions actually impacted outcomes for student learning. And a lot of what we asked was, it's one thing to see it on paper and see data around it. It's one thing to say that this is a really important action, but we really wanted to hear from our community and especially our students. Did you actually feel it at school? Did you notice any changes from it? Tell us your stories. And a lot of their stories, not only were they incredibly moving and impactful, but they really helped us as adults making these decisions know where are we falling short and where are we really seeing the greatest impact for students in their day-to-day lives. And then from there, each of these groups gave recommendations. And in these recommendations, you'll see at the end of our slideshow, not surprisingly, came out with the exact same 3 priorities. So I'm going to go back to the beginning with our 2019-2020 LCAP goals. As necessary, we need to review where we were and where we're going. This report asked that we identify what those goals were, but also provided evidence of the successes and challenges. So what worked and what didn't work. The 3 goals that we've had for the last 3, technically 4 years, is student success, staff success, and community involvement. Each of these was analyzed, and the following successes and challenges were articulated. For student success, one of the greatest, most significant metrics that we saw across the board was the increased achievement in math. We saw increased proficiency, not just in CAS scores and Galileo scores, but we also saw a significant decrease in Ds and Fs in Algebra 1, which was one of our main priorities. Really what this told us as a staff, but also from the community, was what you're looking at and what you're focusing on and you're measuring does change. And so there was a lot of excitement and motivation around that. Again, one of our greatest successes was we continued services. We never closed our schools for a minute. Our teachers kept teaching, and we had services for students all the way through from March 2020 on. Challenges, on the other hand, included achievement in ELA. Because we had so much focus on math, you could see that ELA was a little bit less on the radar, and with that, we saw some declines in those achievement scores. So again, a necessity to make sure that we are in fact measuring all aspects of student achievement and making sure that we are looking at progress on a regular basis. And then another was the stagnant language learner progress. We saw that in last week's, 2 weeks ago, board meeting, where we really do need to get a spotlight on our EL progress and ensure that we're seeing those data points move forward and our students' achievement improving over time. Goal 2 is staff success. A big success has been in the arena of professional development. In the last 2 years, since we've enacted both your pick your own path options for professional development, but also having teacher-led professional development, we've seen satisfaction with professional development go from in the mid 60% to just around 90 to 95% on most of our PD days. This is a much larger number than we ever anticipated having, and so it's been really exciting to see that, and it really shows the incredible impact that our TLT is having. So thank you to all of our teacher leaders who are showing up and continuing to be experts in their field and being willing to share with the rest of our community. And then the last is, we've said it 100 times, our staff is incredible. They continued to deliver high quality, standards-based instruction virtually with 0 time to flip. We gave them a weekend and they were back in front of students on camera the very next Monday. And while there was a great deal of transition and training and challenge through that, they were amazing. And never for a moment did our students not have high quality teaching and learning going on in those virtual rooms. Challenges is access. That was one of our challenges all through this last year, and that will continue, and you'll see it in our LCP too. We really found out very clearly where are our challenges in students having access at home And then also, where are areas where we need to have better integration into our classrooms? And so that's an area where we will continue to grow, coming out of a lot of the learning that we've had in the last year. And then our final was community involvement. One of the greatest successes that happened from March of 2020 on was because we've turned to a virtual world and learned how to use those tools, we've seen a significant increase in community engagement. We've seen it in parent meetings, we've seen it in DLAC meetings, we've seen it in student meetings, but we really have captured the audience in a way that we haven't been able to before. So moving forward, we will continue to have virtual options for our families, our community members, and our students to participate so that we can hear far more voices than we've ever heard in the past. And then again, similar to our staff successes, our challenge has really been access in the homes. So we want to make sure we continue to support our schools, our communities, and our community partners who are helping us to ensure that families have either strong, reliable internet at home or community places where we can go and have that internet access. All right. So that brings us to the LCP, the Learning Continuity Plan. Having closed out our 2019-2020 LCAP, we were asked to do a one-year plan, and there were 6 mandated sections: in-person offerings, distance learning, pupil learning loss, mental health and social emotional well-being, pupil and family outreach and engagement, and then school nutrition. Through this process, really what was asked was, what were our key learnings? What really worked well and what did not work well? What are things that we want to continue to have happen even though we don't have to anymore? One of the things that came out above and beyond is our culture of caring really needs to continue to be the foundation of everything we do. It didn't matter if we were in school or if we were at home. The foundation of having trust, respect, inclusion, and caring is necessary, and we can achieve that in any type of environment. So making human connections is really important regardless of the environment that we're in. Finally is those consistent articulated learning goals. In a lot of ways, having those essential standards and spending the time building and agreeing upon the essentials and proficiency scales saved us a lot during the pandemic, because we were able to say, these are our essentials. We need to let go of everything else and just focus on these key pieces of learning. We saw significantly less learning loss than some of our neighbors to the south and to the north. So really appreciating the commitment of our staff, commitment of our community to be able to see and support those really key learnings. Finally is the individualized supports. We've been really talking about building the MTSS system and working in that direction. And I think more than ever was it visible how important it is that we are individualizing our instruction and our supports to meet the needs of each student. This is not just academic, this is social emotional. And so next year priority will be our MTSS and ensuring that we have teams at each school who are working in partnership with our community partners to help with that individualized service. Last but not least is high quality, easy access to data. Over and over, one of the things that has come up is, as I said in the beginning, if we're not measuring it and we're not putting a magnifying glass on it, we're not going to see improvements. And it's very hard to do that if you don't have access to data. Data Matters has saved us a significant number of times in being able to make sure that we have accurate, ongoing, and consistent data. So seeing that grow and get into the hands of more and more teachers who are face-to-face with students is going to be another priority. And with that, we're moving into our new goals. So from 2021 to 2024, but focusing today on 2022, we have our 3 goals: culture of caring, culture of competence, culture of excellence. The community groups and our staff all agreed that there was no reason for us to move in any direction outside of the goals that we've already articulated. They've been serving us well. We believe strongly in them, and we have a deep, deep commitment to these 3 goals. The last 2 years, culture of caring has really been our foundation, and we'll continue to work on that in terms of our restorative practices and our social emotional wellness. Our culture of competence, or the development of those MTSS systems, and then obviously our culture of excellence with PBL or proficiency-based learning. Now, the new aspect to the LCAP that has not been in the past, which we are very appreciative of, is those 3 larger goals are called our broad goals. The broad goals will continue with us for all 3 years. So we will continue to work on those through 2024. This new LCAP model allows us to articulate focus goals, 1-year goals. And so with that, we have the opportunity to go to our stakeholders and say, within these larger goals, where do you think we need to be spending our time? Where should our 1-year focus be? And these 2 focus goals came out on top: high quality database decision-making and expanded learning opportunities. We know that coming back in the fall is going to bring challenges, and we know that we need to prepare for higher levels of engagement, support, and services for our students as they transition in, especially some of our students, over 1,000 students who have been in a virtual environment for the last year and have not been back on our campuses. So ensuring that our ELO, or Expanded Learning Opportunities grants, are being used to support our students in this next year to the best of our ability, and then making sure again that we are measuring, and adapting as we go. And then last but not least, as I mentioned, goal 6 is our maintenance of effort or services goal. This goal will continue to be in all of our LCAPs from now until 2024, and it simply lets us know that we are continuing to commit to the staffing, the facilities, and all of the other costs that are accrued in opening our schools each day. While I'm not going to go into these, I just wanted you to have opportunities to dig in a little bit about our community staff and students' feedback so that you can see some of the questions that were being asked and data that was being shared with our community members through our stakeholder engagement process. And then with that, as I said, every single one of the groups that we took input from came up with the same 3 articulated changes. They wanted to see significant increases in mental health counselors, bilingual community liaisons, and consistent, transparent data analysis to make decisions. So as you look through our LCAP and our funding, you'll see those reflected. You'll see we have mental health counselors increased to each school. We have bilingual community liaisons increased for each school. We are adding the restorative practices specialists, which we have had in the past, but it's been grant funded. And so we'd like to see this as a permanent position to support our culture of caring and our culture of competence. And then contribution to our teacher leadership team to ensure that this team can continue to do the work that they've been doing that has allowed us to make so many important shifts for staff and for students. And with that, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Question for Assistant Superintendent, Trustee Butler and Trustee Nell.
Hi, Jen. I said thank you earlier, but I want to say thank you again to you and your staff and everybody involved. I know, as Superintendent Koska said, there were some late nights involved, and this is a newer template. It's not the friendliest template, I'm assuming, and it's one of the mandates we have to do, but it's not the fun mandate that we have to do. But it keeps us accountable. It holds us accountable, which I think is important. We have a lot of support as you read the LCAP, this overarching plan that we work to follow. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of services for students. There's a lot of partners involved, and there's scaffolding there to make sure a student is successful, that they have an opportunity to succeed and get the right education that they deserve. And we try to serve each student individually. So my question is, we have all of these partners and entities involved. How do we keep everybody rowing in the same direction? How do we bring our stakeholders together, through the LCAP process, but how do we continue that message throughout the school year and beyond?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that question. And so I think there's actually 2 pieces there. One is how do we continue to have that stakeholder engagement throughout the year so it's not just the February through June process. And the second half is how do we ensure that our community-based organizations, our partners are actually serving students directly, are coordinated. And so in terms of our community organization partners, that's really the focus of our MTSS and our cost teams. And I didn't use the term cost because it complicates things, but at each school, we have what we call a student studies team. When there's something we need to problem solve, a team that comes together to problem solve, what are the best solutions? Larger than that is a cost team. or a community-based organization team where they are a part of that conversation and we can coordinate services with all of our outside partners. The grant that we've been going to be receiving through and I'm going to not say the right number of letters, I think it's MHHSS, that is specific to mental health counseling that you've heard about on several occasions now, is specific to supporting us for the next several years in creating a highly functioning cost team. And so that is the function that will play, and that is how we will ensure that we have a better working relationship. But I don't know if I want to say it that way. We have a great working relationship, better coordination of services with our community partners. Now, in terms of stakeholder engagement, I think the key is that we want to make sure that those just continue throughout the year. And so what I'd like to see are those teams continue to be a part of our team when we do the analysis through the year. So rather than just bring them in for the final analysis, making sure we have students, parents, community-based as a part of we do a triannual review of data, bringing those teams in at those points as well.
That would be great. I would really like to see that myself. So thank you.
Trustee Nell.
Well, this is a lot of work, and I'm having a little trouble with my voice. I think I lost it at an event earlier today. So thank you very much for the work that you put forward. I'm still absorbing a lot of it, but I do recognize the amount of individuals and personnel that went into this. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? So, Jen, I want to thank you personally. I know you, as you were doing graduation, you were wandering around with laptops and trying to find terminals to finish work to get it done to your team so they could pull it together. I know this was really a strenuous effort on the part of the whole team. And thank you for that, to be able to bring it to us this evening. And of course, this is the staff report. We're going to be approving this at the next board meeting on the 22nd. Are there any other comments or questions we have for Assistant Superintendent Larson at this time? If not, I think we're going to move on to our next item. Thank you very much for a really tome. I don't know there's a word for this. Tome. And the work that goes into it is going to guide us for the next year. That's great. Thank you very much. So we're going to move into the next important document we have for this evening. This will be the preliminary general fund budget and budget reserves. Superintendent Koska, do you want to lead us in this item?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually the kind of document, the work on the budget that could put somebody in a tomb to create a home that is our budget. And we're thrilled to have Lois Standring here to help us with this. I'm sure Lois would be the first to admit that she rides on the back of greatness of our employees who did this work before she was here and in her first couple weeks here as the assistant superintendent. And, there's always, we need to give a very special thanks to Nancy Walker, who is the genius behind our budgets. And Nancy is always someone who gives her heart and soul to this work and who puts in ridiculous hours in order to make it happen. And I want to acknowledge that never have those hours been more ridiculous than this year with the transitions that we saw. One of the things that I want NUSD to commit to is to making sure, and I know Lois is on board with this, is to making sure that our budget development process and our LCAP process are not like they were this year, that people do not have to put in the time that they've had to put in this year in order to get this document to us in a timely way. But with that being said, I just want to put out another special thanks to everybody who played a role in getting us to this point. One last thing before I turn it over to Lois. You're going to have a chance to ask any questions that come to mind for you tonight. One thing that I know as I look at a dense document like a budget, I have lots of questions that come to me after the fact. So I'm hoping that the trustees will send any questions that come up between the end of business tonight and Friday when we're getting ready to post the agenda. Get those questions to Lois so that she can get answers worked into the board packet that you receive on Friday when you get your board packet. It'll help make sure that everybody's getting the same information in a timely way. will just help us with communication and making sure that we serve you, which then, of course, serves the community well. So with that being said, that's the world's longest introduction. I'm going to turn it over to our new Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations, who we're so happy to have here with us, Lois Standring.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Koska, and good evening, Board. I'm very excited to be here and become part of Novato's family. It has been a whirlwind of 2 weeks. I can't even explain what I just started 2 weeks ago today, and have learned so much in the last 2 weeks. And this budget, of course, has been the biggest push. And I will echo what Superintendent Koska said. The staff here in business services is amazing. I feel so fortunate to come into a group of people who are so dedicated to their work and to such good work. And I can't even say how Nancy has been and the work she put in. Superintendent Koska had it correct. She puts her heart and soul into it. And she is my support. There's no way you can learn a budget like this in 2 weeks. So I will be presenting the basics, and she is here. I can see her name, and she will be there to answer some questions that perhaps I'm not able to answer. But I do think the idea of sending questions to me after tonight is a very good way to make sure that they get answered thoroughly and correctly. And we can cover them next week. So with that, I will share my screen. If I can find, there it is. No, that's not what I want. How about this? You know, I practiced and it was there earlier.
Okay.
There it is. All right.
There you go.
Thank you. All right. So I'll start off with a basic explanation. I will quickly learn how this board enjoys being having a presentation about the budget, but I can only do what I know. So I'm going to start with the basics. And that is, what is a school district budget? It's something that we're required to do. It's one of 4 annual reports that we must put together and pass on to the county so they can do their appropriate oversight. It's a basis, it's a document by which we base our daily operations, and where it allows us to pay people, pay bills, do all kinds of things to keep ourselves moving along in support of the education of our students. We create a budget using assumptions, knowledge that we have from going to workshops, talking to the county, learning about what's going on in the state. But along with that, those assumptions change daily. It's a fluid document and it changes consistently. Not until we get to unaudited actuals do we have numbers that are firm and definite. A budget is something we work through for the entire year. And from the state level, some of the things that are important for this particular budget, it's interesting that Prop 98, the main source of funds for school districts, it's at a historical high, which sounds lovely, but there are, of course, other sides to that take that money and we have to use it in many ways that we don't choose to, but are forced upon us. There is a super COLA this year, which is a combination of last year's unused COLA, this year's COLA, plus an extra 1% based on that extra Prop 98 dollars. The governor would like to provide a universal transitional kindergarten for California. There's a 4-year implementation period, and that is something that it seems that the legislature supports also. That will be very interesting to see how that's rolled out and how it works. I saw an article today that talked about the impact of this proposal on early childhood education providers. So that's an interesting way to think about how it might impact education in general. The governor and the legislature both support clearing all the deferrals, all except perhaps the one next June, which would just go from June to July. So that will be a big help to districts. And then one thing that the legislature is pushing forward is to give districts more support for the pension increases, and perhaps also for the unemployment increase that we see as a result of COVID. And they are talking about, when May Revise came out, and I know Laura Fan talked to you about it, there were many, many programs that the governor suggested that he wanted to support. Well, the legislature is more interested in cutting some of those, cutting down that long list, and perhaps putting dollars into lowering our pension rate for the next 2 to 3 years, which would be a boon to our budget. So this is a summary of what you see when you open up the budget document and you look at the first page of what we call the SACS report. And I'll just go through some of the most remarkable pieces about it. And then if you have any questions, we can go from there. So if you can see, and this, what's important to know about this document is that it is a combination of restricted and unrestricted funding. And you'll soon learn that I talk a lot about unrestricted versus restricted. Unrestricted is where we really need to put our attention. Restricted gives us lots of opportunity to offer special things to our students, and it's wonderful that we have those funds. But it is the unrestricted money where we have to make sure we are balanced, and that is where we give our raises. That is where we add any sorts of basic things for the district. So it's really important, and that's where most of our funding lands from the state. So we need to always be aware of what our unrestricted numbers look and how they fall out to the bottom. But this document, at this time, when you do your budget, it compares estimated actuals, which are the numbers at this point in 2021 where it looks like they'll end. Now, of course, we'll go through closing and get to an unaudited actual, and these numbers will be different. There are always dollars that, as they say, fall out to the bottom of the budget that have gone unspent in the current year for a variety of reasons. But right now, these are what our estimated actuals are for 2020-21, and we compare it to what our budget is. And when there's differences, it's always interesting to talk about what those differences are. So the very first one, total revenue, it looks like we have this huge decrease in revenue, when in fact, if you split these out, the revenue for unrestricted actually increases by $3.5 million. Whereas the revenue for restricted goes down by 16 million. So therefore netting to that 13 million. And it's very important to know that the unrestricted revenue of the increase of 3.5 million represents the high COLA, that super COLA, as well as the fact that we are still being protected for enrollment. So that is a boon to us for the current year. It won't last, but it's nice to have for 21-22. And the restricted change has mostly to do with carryover not being budgeted and COVID funding that is budgeted in the prior year, but not budgeted in future years, all on the restricted side. And then down with salaries and benefits, there is an increase there, and that mostly reflects, there's of course the basics of step and column, but there's also that during COVID, there were savings, significant savings. Substitutes weren't paid for. There weren't hourly budgets for teachers to do extra hourly type of work. Plus there were vacancies that we never filled during the year. And now they're being filled and they show up in the new budget. Also in this number, because it's restricted as well as unrestricted, are the positions that we have added for the ELO, the Expanded Learning Opportunity Plan that Jennifer Larson was referring to. Those are reflected here. So when it's all put together, it's quite an increase of $4.2 million. Supplies and operations, those decrease, and that's mostly because there's going to be carryover from the sites that isn't posted in the budget until we flip into the new budget, and then the business office will post that carryover, and it will start, and you'll see at first interim, those budgets are increased as we add expenses to them. And now the sources and uses, the big change there is last year, 2021, still this year, we transferred $2 million into the Fund 17 as a sort of rainy day fund. So that did not happen this year. So that's what that change is. And then you follow the numbers down to show what the net change in fund balance is. And we had an increase for 2021, savings of costs plus all the influx of COVID funding. And then you start to see the negative, or the changes that are negative rather than a positive change. And so it's taking our fund balance down, but also up because in the revenue had increased. Any questions on this slide?
I have a question. Laura.
Okay.
Hi, thanks. So just, I'm looking at the 3-year projection, and I'm going across the bottom. So in the year we're currently in, that's going to
well, now that, okay, go ahead and ask your question, then I'll.
So, yeah, the year we're currently in, our ending fund balance is 19 million. The year we're planning, the budget year you're planning right now, based on all the assumptions, it's going to drop to 14 million because we're going to spend 5 million more than we take in. And then the year after that, it's going to drop by $12 million if we make no other changes.
I'm sorry this wasn't clear. This is only 2 years. This is just the comparison of 2021 to 21-22. The third column merely shows the change between those.
Oh, okay. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not that bad. Really, it's not.
No, I was going. Okay.
No, we'll get to the multi-year in just a minute, and that will be more clear.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
I hope that makes you feel better.
Any other questions? No, we're okay. Please continue.
Okay. So whenever we do a budget, we need to make the assumptions, as I had mentioned in the first slide. And this is a snapshot of some of the assumptions we've used. There's several more, but I wanted to just pick some of the more important ones. And of that, I'll just talk about a few. You can see the enrollment. It from 7,309 in this upcoming budget year, and then it goes down, but it actually goes up a little bit in the third year. I've learned that these are numbers from the King projections, and that it was the moderate projection that was chosen to use as the assumption to come up with our revenue figures. So that's fairly important. An assumption in the budget that we're presenting with the multi-year shows the parcel tax for this coming year, the next year, but then the budget was assumed that the parcel tax, because it's not definite, we could not include it in the budget. And I wanted to point out the COLA at the very top, the 5.07, which they're calling the super COLA this year, and then more moderate COLAs in the out years. And then, of course, PERS and STIRS down at the bottom. It shows the PERS going up, getting up to 27 in the third year out, and STIRS going to 19. And from what I hear, and this was from conversations with the county, if the legislature gets what they are proposing, those two 19.1s could very likely go down to what we have this year, 16 something, which would be a big help for districts. Any questions on this slide?
We're all good. Questions? If not, okay, we're all good here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Well, here we are with the multi-year projection, and I have divided this out rather than look at it combined. It makes much more sense to look at it from the unrestricted versus the restricted. So I start with the unrestricted because to me that's the more important. And our revenue is from the first year to the next, it goes down. And that would be reflective of our decline in enrollment that we saw back on those assumptions. And there's some COLA in there, but the decline does trump it and take the total revenue down. And then it does go up in the third year, and that we saw that the enrollment projection had a little bit of an increase, and then we get the advantage of the COLA. Salaries and benefits, they're a fairly steady increase with step and column, and the STRS and PERS. These are the assumptions would be increasing rates. So if we get some relief with STRS, those numbers will look better. Supplies and operations has a slight escalation factor, not too large. Now it's the sources and uses that becomes interesting. That's clearly a big number. Those are our contributions from the unrestricted budget to the restricted budget. And we had a question or a request that we go over that a little more thoroughly, so I'm prepared to do that. And I wanted to, of course, say, and I think you all know, that the majority of that dollar amount is our contribution to special education. This particular budget, it is estimated that it will be $10,996,000 will be our donation to special ed. And the rest of that 12 million, the biggest piece is the 3% that we have to contribute to routine and restricted maintenance. For us, that is $2,812,000 for this budget. And to offset that, there is a positive contribution. It comes into the general fund from the parcel tax of $1 million. And then there's a few smaller amounts, just a couple $100,000 that go to special programs. There's a CTE ROP contribution for some salaries of $134,000 and support for our athletic trainers of $126,000. So that's what makes up that $12 million. And you can see it stays fairly constant the second year, but the third year out, it jumps because of the lack of the parcel tax. So here, Ross, is the showing of the third year out. So it looks a little bit rosier than what was appeared to be. Yeah. Right. So it goes from 11.1 million over the 3 years down to 8.9, and this is in unrestricted. But this is the one that really matters. The restricted, you're required, or you, in most sense, you can't spend more than you get in restricted. The only exception to that, of course, is special education, and the impact of that reflects in the unrestricted budget because of the contribution. So this is where I always look at the health of the district. Any questions on this one?
And these are assumptions based on the current plan. Is if we take steps to improve our financial, sharpen our pencil, then these get better over time. This is where we are.
Of course. And it is also based on what we know right now about the state. So once the governor and legislature have come to terms and he signs off on a budget, that's, if there's significant difference, you will see us present a 45-day revise, which could change it either way, but hopefully to a positive way.
Okay. Any other questions for Lois? No, we're good here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And here's same thing for restricted, and I don't know that I need to go into this much. This is fairly consistent year to year, except now we have our COVID funding that really sends it up and it sends it down. And I have a special slide on COVID funding, but that's some of the variances you see are based on what year the pots of money come into the budget. So, and the goal of restricted money is you end up spending it. That's the point. It's supposed to come in and benefit our students, and then it goes out. And you can't spend more than you get, as I said, except, of course, special ed. And that contribution shows right here in sources and uses. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
That's okay. I just wanted to clarify because I know people that don't know how to do government or nonprofit accounting. It's a little tricky and understanding restricted. So the items like the salary and benefits in here, that would be like the grant funded positions, and would that also include the parcel tax, the positions that are paid through the parcel tax?
I don't know. I don't know if the parcel tax is considered restricted or not. Nancy is listening. She'll send me a text message in the meantime.
I was thinking that we do pay through the parcel tax for certain positions, or at least that's how it's been in the past. So, but I also was just clarifying that it would also be those grants that we have. Those are restricted.
Yes, it's Title I, Title II. It's all special ed salaries, whatever restricted money. Yes, and Nancy has answered. She says that is correct. It includes some parcel tax salaries.
Okay.
So I just learned something. Thank you. Anything else on this one?
We all good? We're all good here. Thanks.
Okay. I just wanted to give you a picture because to me it's astounding the money that has flooded school districts in the name of COVID relief. And without going into what all these acronyms stand for, you can see, I think I added it up. I should have put a total on. It's close to $19 million with the various spending. And most of this has been spent. The ELO, the expanded learning opportunity, that is what's mainly the focus for next year. Much of that has been put into the budget through LCAP actions and services. The IPI, which is the in-person instruction, that has partially been spent. There's a piece of that still needs to be used. And one of the pieces of the ELO that's important is 20% of it needs to be spent on paraprofessionals. So that's going to be an important piece for the district to figure out how, and as you can see, there's a quick turnaround. It's this coming school year. So we will need to figure out how we're going to spend the piece that's meant for paras. The one that we have not budgeted at all yet is the biggest one, ESSER 3. $5.3 million, and we have a couple of years to spend that. So that hopefully when we figure out what was effective from this year's LCAP, we can use the ESSER 3 money to continue that into future years, which is nice that we have some time with larger sums of money. Any questions on these?
Trustees, any questions? I'm looking, we're good for now.
Okay. One of the compliance issues that came into law a few years back is districts have to be transparent about their excess reserves, with the definition of excess reserves being anything more than the minimum reserve requirement, which for a district our size is 3%. So this is our opportunity to be transparent with the public and explain why it is we need to have reserves greater than what is required by the Ed Code. And so this is just a simple diagram showing what our reserves are. We have in the general fund, it totals $14,332,000, which ties to one of the previous slides. And then in Fund 17, which is where we transferred that $2 million. Oh, I'm so sorry. That $2 million last year, we have $5,238,000. And when you're just looking at the general fund, what happens is we have above the minimum reserve $8.6 million. And in the document that is included with your board packet, there were the statement of reasons as to why the district needs these. And the reasons listed were increases in PERS and STIRS benefit contributions, the ongoing declining enrollment, a recommendation in the board desire for 2 months of operating expenditures, which is 17%. I believe the board, I'm blanking, I know Nancy told me, but I'm blanking on what the board recently passed, what they would like to have their reserves at. It's close to that, I believe. The uncertainty of continued funding of the LCFF at the levels as predicted by Department of Finance. Although things look rosy right now, we all know that there's another recession somewhere down the road. And then we need to pay attention to the idea that the parcel tax is not guaranteed past the second year out. So those are the reasons we put in to be transparent. And with that, that is my presentation for tonight, and I'll take any questions.
Great questions for Lois. Andrew? Questions? I think you've overwhelmed us. So according to Superintendent Koska, there's an opportunity for people to submit questions. Superintendent Koska, could you repeat how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure we have a full, rich discussion as appropriate tonight and a chance to ask any questions that you have on your minds tonight or make any comments. But as I shared earlier, there's always those times where you think of that question that you had after, and you're like, man, I wish I would have asked that. Let's make sure we get to those questions to Lois so she can get the best answers from her team so that we can bring you the best information back on next Tuesday's board meeting. So that's the goal.
Cool. Any other comments? I have one. Trustee Nell.
I was wondering if there was a link or some access or a resource that would give us more details on the conditions regarding the acronym soup of COVID relief funding that we are receiving. So
that's a great question. I will find the best one I can and get it to you. There are several different sources, but there's some very clear ones. So I'll find the clearest and send it your way.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? So my comment is the analysis of excess reserves. And it's the definition of excess. The fact is it's everything above the 3%. And if we in this district go from a reserve of 3% to a reserve of 2.9999%, the county office comes in and takes us over. So 3% protects the county, but there's no protection in the 3% for any variation in our circumstances. And so whatever protections that we judge appropriate, and you've listed some of them, is basically how do we have to be above the 3%. Our safety margin is dollars over 3%. County Office of Education has a 3% safety margin. So people I just object to the word excess. Excessive reserve just is I run a household, we got expenses, excess, it's like saying excess money. There's no such thing as excess money. So I just object to it. But okay, but with that said, I think we're done here for this evening on this item. Lois, I look forward to working with you further on this. I think the board's, this was very useful for all of us to understand where we stand in some very changing times. Welcome to the Novato family.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
You've got some great people that are standing by you already, and we're thrilled to have you stand by us. So I think with that, we're done with this item. And with this item, I think that we're done with the evening's business. So with nothing else, I will adjourn tonight's meeting of the Nevada Unified School District. Adjourned.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you.